flow.
Welcome to episode 127 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The Toronto Maple Leafs are 16-7-6 through 29 games this season. We are recording this right after the Leafs lost 5-2 to the New York Rangers. Very disappointing game. Goals going in off people's asses and skates and off of everywhere. And the Leafs didn't get one power play on the night. But since our last podcast, there's been a lot going on with this team. They were down 5-0 against the Columbus Blue Jackets, stormed back to tie it at 5 before losing in overtime. Then the Leafs laid an absolute beatdown on Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins 7-0. And then, of course, they just lost 5-2 to the Rangers. So we are going to get into everything that has gone down with this team over the last little while since our last podcast. And we are also going to talk about the Ottawa Senators firing head coach DJ Smith. It's about damn time. And I have a lot to say about the Ottawa Senators. And so does Michael Lepore.
Yeah, why not?
And it is now that time to officially welcome my partner in crime into the podcast. How you doing today, buddy?
Bruno, every episode, you ask me how I'm doing, and usually I have a super positive answer. But my team just got beat after 3 goals, 3 ridiculous goals, went off Leafs players. Like you said, we also didn't get a power play. I find that so strange, and that's not me being a Leafs homer. I just think it's kind of tough for a team to go 60 minutes without drawing a single penalty. Come on now. But yeah, I mean, the Leafs have made us happy lately, so there are some games you're just not supposed to win, and I think tonight's game against the Rangers was one of them. And especially the way we played in New York, you kind of thought that the Rangers were going to play a solid game tonight. But I'll ask you, Bruno, you notice the Rangers were favored tonight? I found that strange.
I think right before puck drop, it was pretty much a pick 'em.
Okay.
But the Leafs were underdogs basically like pretty much the entire day. And then I think right before puck drop, it was like minus 110 aside. So it was, yeah, I was surprised too. Like I actually put a bet on the Leafs tonight.
Yeah. Well, I told my buddy, when do you get the Leafs as an underdog at home? I thought maybe they knew something. I say Vegas knew something about maybe the flu was still kicking around the Leafs a little bit, or there was rumors someone wasn't going to play, maybe possibly, but it's not very often the Leafs are an underdog at home, so that was a little shocking.
Yeah, you almost have to insta-bet the Leafs when they're an underdog at home. You don't get them as an underdog very often, period. So whenever you get that opportunity, you got to bet on them. And of course, they lost 5-2. So
their ass kicked.
Lighting money on fire. Always a good time. But Lepore, before we get into the Leafs talk, we have an update on the Auston Matthews jersey giveaway contest. So let everybody know the situation.
Okay, so thank you so much to everyone who entered. We had some pretty terrible answers because Matthews went a little cold for a while. But the winner was Christopher, who, ironically enough, lives right in downtown T-Dot, man. Very, very nice for him. He was ecstatic. He was very, very grateful for the jersey, very thankful. He's a big fan of the show. So, Christopher, man, send us a photo with that jersey. Let's see it. We'll post it on the pod.
Shout out, Christopher. Congratulations. And like Lepore said, we will post it on our feed if you send that jersey our way. Send us a pic of you rocking the jersey. We love giving away stuff to GFP Nation. So stay tuned because we'll probably give something away very, very soon. All right. Let's get right into the hockey talk here. Or yeah, a little teaser. We're always giving things away. We're always showing love to GFP Nation. But
as long as you're buying Bruno.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see who's grabbing this next jersey. But we got to talk about this Leafs team because on the last episode, we talked about how they're turning a corner, how there was still a little bit of an uneasy feeling around this team because despite them winning games and, not losing in regulation, like look at their record, 10-2-4 over their last 16 games. Before tonight's game, they had the best record in the NHL over the last 15. I'm not quite sure if they still have the best record over the last 16 after this loss to the Rangers. They actually might, but there was still a little bit of uneasiness because like they weren't dominating play, all of that stuff, the underlying numbers. We've talked about this ad nauseum. And it seemed like these last like couple of weeks, they were finally turning a corner, getting more secondary scoring, dominating the play a little bit more, getting healthier on the blue line with the return of Liljegren. And then they lose this game 5-2 to the Rangers. And again, there was a lot of like luck involved on the Rangers side with goals going in off asses and skates and you name it. But how do you feel about this team right now? Like, do you still feel like they're playing well? Are you worried about how they're playing? What's your sense of this team right now?
It's a good question because it is a debate. I will say that they're definitely tighter. And tonight's game, I mean, neither team, credit to the Rangers too for getting the W in the way they played. We didn't give up much, right? I mean, the Columbus game was a joke, but at the end of the day, everyone knows the flu is going around the team, and who knows when those IVs kicked in. Well, it must have kicked in the third period, but they just look more like themselves. And when I say that, I'm referring to more of a Sheldon Keefe kind of team, or the type of team we're used to under Sheldon Keefe. Are they completely there? No. I mean, they got to show me more. They got to go on even more of a heater to show me that. But it's positive steps. One thing I will say is I found early in the season, and you mentioned the lack of secondary scoring that everyone was freaking out about. When you went down the depth chart, there was a lot of guys who would just ghost. Like, you'd watch games and barely notice them and be very disappointed. Some of them are new signings. But I will say that's kind of progressed. Like, Bertuzzi may have been the Leafs' best player tonight. Like, he's been very, very good. You can tell Domi, he's just, I don't know what was up with Max early in the season, but his confidence is growing. Like, he's trying things, he's skating harder, he's being creative, right? I mean, that goal against Pittsburgh was sick. I mean, how he hesitated. He wouldn't have done that earlier in the season. So I'm happy with that. And like I said, they're still finding ways to win, and it's positive, and their record is good. And I'm sure they're still on pace for probably like 108, 109 points for the season. But I'm greedy and I'm selfish, and I'm a beatdown Leafs fan, so I still would like to see a little more.
My favorite thing about this Leafs team right now is that they're scoring a ton of goals. And we've talked about this ever since we launched this podcast. There's always been this feeling around the Leafs and this narrative around the Leafs that they're this high octane offense that scores a million goals and can't defend. The thing is, that really hasn't been the case over the last few seasons, especially in the playoffs. Like, this team has had trouble scoring goals at high leverage situations. And I feel like I've said that a million times over the last 2 to 3 years that we've been doing this podcast. But when I looked at the stats before recording tonight, and I saw that the Leafs were second in the NHL in goals per game, that made me very happy. Now, they only scored 2 goals tonight against the Rangers, so they've probably been knocked down a peg, but second in the league in goals per game. And that's what we're used to seeing from this team. We're used to seeing them in the top 5. Like, it wasn't the case last year. Last year, they finished 9th in the NHL in goals per game. They were also 7th in goals against per game. This year, again, before the result of tonight's game against the Rangers, they were 2nd in the league in goals per game and 15th in the league in goals against per game. So obviously, defensively, I want to see the Leafs clean things up. And those 2 stats are not the be all and end all. There's a lot of other more like advanced numbers that you can look at. But I'm so happy that this team is scoring, because I think the way that we all thought about this team in the offseason with the additions of Domi and Bertuzzi and even Klingberg for that matter, was that this team was going to get back to being one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. And I think we're finally seeing that now. Now, it really helps when you score 5 goals against Columbus and 7 goals against Pittsburgh. It helps you shoot up the standings in all the offensive categories. But this is what I want to see from this team. And who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs. But again, I want to reiterate, that has been an issue for this team in the playoffs. Like, Lepore, I'll go over some numbers right now, because I even heard a segment today on TSN radio where they were talking about like the Leafs. Oh, once again, they're this high octane offense. Can they learn how to defend in the playoffs? And I'm like, where the fuck is this narrative coming from? This team hasn't been able to score to save their lives in the playoffs. Like, we all remember
so lazy
when they got knocked out last year, those last few games against the Lightning. Obviously, they beat the Lightning, but then going into the Panthers series and to when they got eliminated in 5 games, like there was a stretch, I believe, of 7 games where they scored 2 or less goals.
right.
Like, it was brutal. Like, you just look at their playoff stats in terms of goals per game the last 7 years that they've made the playoffs in a row. 9th, 4th, that was a good year. 10th, 19th, 11th, 9th, and 7th among 16 playoff teams. Now, the year they were 19th, that was the COVID year.
Mhm.
It was the return to play plan when 14 teams were invited back to the playoffs. But anyway, this is a long point that I'm making here, but I'm very happy that this team is back to scoring goals. And I'm confident that as the season goes on and as we head into the playoffs, it's going to be more of a Sheldon Keefe-like team that we're used to, tighter defensively. But I'm happy that they're back to actually scoring goals.
Mm-hmm. That Columbus game, did you see that game as a good thing, a bad thing, or just throw it in the garbage because it was just such a mess and all the stuff about the players being sick?
I think you just throw it in the garbage. But Lepore, how good is this team with the goalie pulled?
Yeah, they're the
With
best.
the net
I think
empty, this team is world class, man.
I think Luke Fox tweeted like they got to be the best 6-on-5 team of all time.
Unbelievable.
But hockey is so strange because I'm not going to sit here and say when Nylander scored that first goal, I was like, oh my God, we're tying it. But I'll say it at 5-3, I was pretty confident. And when that 5th goal went in, I didn't even flinch. I was just waiting for it. And it's funny how, man, in hockey, how quickly the ice changes. But of course, in Leafs fashion, they lost in overtime, and everyone's been making that joke since. But yeah, it was fun. I would have liked for them to have gotten the 2 points. And even Matthews, man, you feel like an asshole sometimes when you talk about what ifs for guys who've accomplished so much. He scored 2 goals in the last 2 minutes, and he had that chance in overtime. Imagine he tops it off like one of the greatest comebacks in the history of the organization with a hat trick in overtime. Just epic, but God forbid, right? That would happen. And even Willie, the backhand, went between the goalie's legs and wide. What are the odds? But we're proud they got the point. That one was fun.
Santa baby, the season for a fresh cut is finally here with the sponsors of today's show. My God, that was terrible. But this is all about Manscaped. All right. The leaders in below the waist grooming have just launched their 5th generation lawnmower to help you avoid another silent night in the bedroom this year. Take care of your special snowflake with Manscaped and watch your South Pole shine like never before. Get the best stocking stuffer of all by going to manscaped.com and using our exclusive promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Tis the season, Lepore. Tis the season.
Tis the season for Manscaped products in your stocking. Gentlemen, it is Christmas time. The snowflakes are falling. Take care of your jingle bells. Make sure they're clean. Head over to manscaped.com, GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. You will not be disappointed, whether it's for yourself or a stocking stuffer for someone you really and truly love.
Jingle your balls all the way to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive promo code GFP20. So go to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using GFP20.
The Pittsburgh game, though, Bruno, lot to unwrap with that one from a lot of angles. You're already smiling. What's up?
Yeah, we got to talk about this Pittsburgh game. One of the most highly anticipated games of the season. Kyle Dubas coming back to Toronto for the first time. And I was laughing my head off because the broadcast just showed him over and over and over. And you go back to last year, not just last year, but over the last number of years, like whoever's been directing and producing these Leaf games has just been absolutely in love with showing Kyle Dubas like every 15 minutes during the broadcast. And the same thing was happening.
A lot of gifts now that you mention it of Dubas in the press
box.
Yeah,
like think about how many times you've seen Brad Treliving on the broadcast this season. Like, has it been more than like 5 or 6 times?
Good point. Good
For
point.
whatever reason, when Kyle Dubas was the GM of this team, the director of Hockey Night in Canada, and not even just Hockey Night in Canada, any of the national games during the week, every chance they got, they showed Kyle Dubas. So I was just calling it after every goal. I'm like, watch, give it 3 seconds. They're going to show Dubas in the box with Spezza. And
Our
it just
boy
kept happening
Spezza.
over and over and over. Our paisan, Jason Spezza. But
That
no,
one's
it was
weird, man. That one almost hurts more than Dubas leaving.
yeah, that it still feels kind of weird that he
Like
just like
Pittsburgh.
insta followed him to Pittsburgh. I mean, I get
Yeah.
it. Like, it's a great opportunity. You know, he's only like what, a couple years into his post playing career. But it's just like it's kind of it's interesting how they became like a tandem that quickly after his
Yeah.
retirement. But no, I loved it, man. I love the beatdown. It was awesome to see. I know like you're a huge fan of Crosby. I love Sid as well, but man, that was sweet to see a 7-0 beatdown in front of Kyle Dubas. And he just must
Yeah.
be feeling like shit right now because he kind of did everything in his power to, to retool on the fly because Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin are not in the business of missing the playoffs and rebuilding. Like, they're still trying to win. So Dubas goes out and acquires Erik Karlsson and Riley Smith and makes all these other moves. And the Penguins kind of stink. They're on pace for 84 points right now. And they just got their asses kicked against the Leafs. So tough times right now for the Penguins.
Yeah. I mean, credit to the Leafs for putting up a touchdown, but the Leafs look like the fucking Harlem Globetrotters out there, man. And when a team looks like that in the NHL, it's because the other team is really and truly playing poorly. Like, Pittsburgh looked terrible, man. Like, Leafs players were wide open in the offensive zone every time we came down the ice, like grade A scoring chances. That was bad. As far as Dubas goes and his approach to this Penguins team, I'd love to get inside his brain. Even going back to when he was probably negotiating this contract, what was his like mental timeline of like, okay, I know what I'm dealing with. You touch on it, Bruno. He's got Malkin, he's got Sid. He can't rebuild while those two guys are still around. I'd like to know the timeline he had in his head, or on the opposite side, the timeline that he was told. Okay, this is what it is for the next, I don't know, decide between like 2 to 5 years. And then you can blow it up and it's your team, or you can do what you want. And maybe he's even thinking too, Dubas is a confident guy that he went in there thinking, you know what? Yeah, I'll agree to that. I'll stick around for 2 to 5 years and then build it my way. But maybe I can convince him to do it sooner. So,
well, I'll tell you
know.
this. I don't think he was anticipating he'd have to blow this thing up after one season. Like, this is crazy now, right? Because he's got Karlsson on the books for, what is it, like 3 to 4 more years? He's under contract, something like that. I have to double check that. But I think if you're Dubas, like, he's probably watching from the press box being like, holy shit, I got to blow up this team immediately. Like, that team is not going anywhere. And we talked about this before the season. I picked the Senators. I believe I picked them to miss the playoffs. I think you did as well, or you maybe had them as a wild card team potentially. But anyway, we both did not feel confident in that team heading into the season. And like, it just looks brutal, man. Like, do you think they have any chance of making the playoffs at this point?
Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
No.
And it's not
No.
like they're way out of it, but like, I have zero confidence in that team making the playoffs. Now that we're 30 games into the season.
Team styles are weird because you can sometimes, even if a team's not playing well, you look at their lineup and from watching games, yeah, I can see that team going on a run. I can't even see Pittsburgh going on a run. We talked about Edmonton on the last show, and just a quick point. Lepore had the hot take that the Oilers were going to finish ahead of the Vancouver Canucks. Since that comment, the Oilers have lost 3 in a row and are looking like absolute shit.
That's always how it goes.
Yeah. Oh, so it's it's 2 in a row, and they were down 3-1 earlier tonight. We'll see how that one ends up. But yeah, like the Oilers, I think if everyone put on the injected the truth serum, we say, yeah, the Oilers can reel off 9 in a row. They can go 12-2-1 in a 15 game span. Pittsburgh can't do that. They don't have it, man. They don't have it. And it is it is strange. And Pittsburgh fans, if you're listening or watching, comment down below. What do they need? Or what is it? I mean, is it something big that like, this totally has to be revamped? Or is it just one of those small hockey things that a little change will go a long way? It's interesting because, I mean, you look at it, of course, not a shit lineup, but they look flat. I think that's the best way to describe the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, because we don't watch them nearly enough to probably have like a great take on what's wrong with them. Maybe you watch them a little bit more than I do.
I watched
like,
them a lot because of Sid, yeah.
I'm just looking at their numbers. Like Jake Gensel's having a good year, 34 points in 30 games. Sid's having another good year, over a point a game. Malkin right around a point a game. Even Erik Karlsson, like numbers wise, has been good. Their goaltending has even been pretty solid. Jari at 913 save percentage in 22 games. Nedeljkovic 925 save percentage in 8 games this year. So like when you just look at the numbers across the board, you think, this team should be pretty decent. And then you go look at the standings and you're like, what the hell is going on? This team, as of recording, 7th in the Metropolitan Division, 31 points in 30 games, on pace for 84 points this season. Like, it's just, and you watched them against the Leafs the other night. And as you said, like, they just look flat. They look brutal. Like, no life to their game. They got down and it almost seemed like they had mailed it in after it was like 3 or 4-0. And they're just like, fuck this. And, even though it was obviously a huge game for Dubas, just wasn't a good scene for the Pittsburgh Penguins, man. And by the way, that final between the Oilers and Islanders, 3-1 Islanders. So
yeah, I'm sure everyone saw my head down. I was checking it. So like I said, since Lepore had that hot take, Oilers have lost 3 in a row and allowed 15 goals in 3 games. So.
Wow. And we said it, man. If the Oilers hit like one little speed bump, they're right back to where they were, right? Fighting their asses off for a playoff spot. But the Penguins they're kind of screwed, man. Like they got some good teams ahead of them. The Islanders, who just won again, New Jersey, Carolina, like Philadelphia is having a good season. I don't really believe in Philadelphia. The Rangers are the best team in the Eastern Conference record-wise right now. So I think Pittsburgh's kind of screwed. I think they got to blow it up. I want to see if Dubas actually has the balls to do it, because it's probably going to go against the wishes of Crosby and Malkin and Letang.
I don't think he can, Bruno. I don't think it's up to him.
Yeah. You think it's like an ownership
he
thing?
was told. He was told. Come on, man. He's the new guy in town. He can't go in there and be like, Sid, I think it's time to be shipped out. Come on. He can't have that conversation. Sid's going to be in management one day with the Penguins or some president or something. Maybe even Malkin. He'll have a role. Letang, those guys. So I don't know, man. Pittsburgh's stuck. They're stuck. And I don't have a solution. And Lepore is pretty arrogant. I usually have a lot of solutions. But I don't know what to do with the Pittsburgh Penguins right now.
Yeah, I don't even know if like a major trade is going to help this team, because even in the offseason, when they traded for Karlsson, I said, I don't really think this is moving the needle at all for this team. I just think there's so many other teams in the Eastern Conference that are better than them. And I'm not sure any significant move is going to change that. Lepore, I want to quickly talk about Auston Matthews, because he scored another 2 goals tonight. He's got 25 in 28 games. He's currently on pace to score 73 goals in 81 games this season. This is getting ridiculous now. Like, do you think there's any chance that this dude can score 70 this year? Like, I mean, even scoring 60 is going to be tough, but do you think like he can actually put up 70 goals? Like, we haven't seen, who's the last guy that scored 70 goals?
70? Oh, I should know that. I think you're going back, man.
Was it like Mogilny or Teemu Selanne, one of those?
Could have been. Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those for sure. You should look up, the list. Like, Lepore's going to look it up, like the list of like best goal scoring seasons in NHL history, because once you're in the 70s, you're in the top whatever.
Like, this is insane now. Steven Stamkos hasn't had 260 goal seasons. Like, I think we can all agree, like, the 3 best goal scorers of the last like 15 years have been Matthews, Ovechkin, and probably Stamkos. And Ovechkin and Stamkos only have 160 goal season. Like, this dude is about to have another 60 goal season, 2 in the last 3 years, and might hit 70 goals.
You want to laugh, Bruno? Alexander Mogilny and Teemu Selanne both did it in 92-93.
Oh, wow. The same season.
The
There you
same
go.
season. That's why it was so confusing. Yeah.
Jeez. But do you think he has a chance at 70? Like, this is like, I know it sounds insane, but if anyone's going to do it, it's him.
No, I can't.
Okay.
70. Because you got to stay healthy. You miss a few games. It fucks shit up. I mean, even 65's rough. Like, he hit 60 last time. He hit it the second last game of the season. He didn't play the last game. 70's bananas. I think for something like that to happen, for anyone in the NHL for that matter, you'd have to have some crazy luck go your way. Like two 5-goal games in one season or something stupid, or just a shit ton of empty netters that are going in for you. So 70, man, no, I can't see 70. I hope, because it'd be fantastic for him and for the league. It'd be something to watch. How about you, man? You're usually confident in our boy 34.
I don't think he's going to score 70 either. Like, if he does, I'd be pretty stunned. Like, I don't think anyone, I don't even think McDavid's capable of scoring 70.
Yeah, it's
like, because even
hard.
last year, McDavid had like his absolute like peak goal scoring season. And I think he finished with, I want to say 62.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. I'm going to have to double check that as well. I keep putting you to work, checking all these numbers here as I'm just talking away. But I think he's probably going to hit 60.
64. 64.
Okay, he scored 64 last season.
Because it's the 26th best goal scoring season in the history of the National Hockey League.
Wow.
Same list.
So I think Matthews scores 60 and becomes like the first guy from like this next generation to do this, but scoring 70 is going to be difficult. I think, as you said, like, I think the number that he wants to hit is he wants to outdo what McDavid did last season. So if he can hit 65,
yeah,
I think that's what he's gunning for, because heading into last season, I think McDavid was in fuck you mode and said, like, all right, you guys just saw Matthews score 60 and you saw me put up like 130 points. Watch how many goals I could score. Watch how many points I could put up. And now I think Matthews is coming back after his down 40-goal season last year, and he's saying, all right, now I'm going to send a fuck you to everybody, and I'm going to score 65 or 70 goals this year. So I think the number, like, heading into the season that Matthews was like secretly gunning for, and he's probably not going to tell anybody, and he's just keeping it to himself, I think the number is 65. And I think he's going to do everything in his power to hit that number.
Yeah. I mean, the only person who's done that since the lockout is Ovechkin, that 1 year. And it was bang on 65, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, that'd be a nice point. If he can get 66, have the best goal scoring season since the lockout, that's definitely something.
Oh, that would be unreal.
Yeah.
Any other Leafs topics you want to cover?
Well, I'll just say it, Bruno. Is Auston Matthews going to win a second Hart trophy?
That's a really good question, because I think right now, like, the leading scorer in the league is Nikita Kucherov, and like, he's got a ton of points. He's like very close to Matthews as well in the goal scoring race, but the Lightning just aren't very good. Like, they're just kind of a middling team right now, and I think that matters a lot. So, when you kind of go down the list, Matthews is, I think he's the leader right now in terms of the Hart.
Yeah.
I think he's right there. If he's not the leader, what is he, second on everyone's ballot at this point? Like, he's in everyone's top 3 at this point. The Leafs are one of the best teams in the league right now, record-wise. He has 25 goals in 28 games. I would say right now he's your leader in Hart Trophy voting.
Yeah, the hot picks early were Jack Hughes and Elias Pettersson.
Exactly, the Vancouver guys.
Yeah,
and Hughes obviously getting off to like a ridiculous start in New Jersey as well. I think Jack Hughes had like 16 points in 6 games to start the season for the Devils, and Quinn Hughes was also unreal. So it was like Pettersson, Hughes, and now Matthews is, I think he's the leader right now. At least if I had a vote.
I get the feeling, I should stop with these takes. I get the feeling, as far as Quinn Hughes goes, I feel like the Norris conversation's kind of over. I'm just thinking, if he stays healthy, he's gonna get it, because the Norris is a weird trophy. It's kind of like, I don't want to call it a lifetime achievement award, but they do make a point, okay, this guy's never won, and he's really good. Because at the end of the day, it's subjective. Who's the best defenseman? And I almost think the voters get a little giddy and excited when someone's new on the block. So just in my mind, I have it locked in my head that he's winning the Norris Trophy.
Yeah, I think so too. And a lot of times it's like a narrative award.
Right.
And then all it takes is like, and I don't want to say like Twitter like affects like all these awards, but all it takes is like someone saying that like, I don't know, whoever's like second in Norris voting that he's not as good defensively. And then all these
Yeah.
numbers come out showing that the defenseman who has 90 points sucks defensively. And we have to give it to the other guy because he's a better all around player. I just think like there's been like this narrative over the last couple of years now that like it's like Quinn Hughes's time to win the Norris, and now he's having another really good season. So yeah, I think he's probably going to win that. The only other guy, and again, it's not like this is a, out of left field or anything. Like Connor McDavid could still win the Hart Trophy, and the reason I say that is because he's got 41 points in 26 games, and if the Oilers make the playoffs after their 2-9-1 start, and he ends up leading the league in scoring, he might just win the Hart Trophy again.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if you lead the league in scoring, you got to be on the ballot. That's the way I've always seen it. But yeah, Quinn Hughes, man, I can't believe how well that guy works the blue line offensively.
Yeah, he's insane.
You always hear, oh, like this guy is so incredible that like, that backwards crossover across the blue line. He's like, it's a joy to watch, man. When he's just cutting across and his butt's sticking out and that puck's in the right place, you're just like, here comes a scoring chance. Like, it's unreal, man. To have that weapon is just so awesome. What a great player.
Yeah, no, he's amazing, and it's probably going to be the first of maybe 2 or 3 Norris trophies down the road. Who knows? Because like, there's a lot of really good defensemen in the league these days. Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Victor Hedman's still awesome. But I think it's Quinn Hughes leading the way for the Norris, Matthews leading the way for the Hart, and obviously the Rocket. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Lepore, it is time. It is that time.
You're excited.
We need to talk about the Ottawa Senators.
We're very excited.
Your second favorite team, boots on the ground in Ottawa. Mr. Michael Lepore, boots on the ground in Ottawa, Ontario, following this shit show of an organization. 11-15 to start the season, and they finally had enough. They fired head coach DJ Smith, who was on his 5th season on the job in Ottawa. This team yet to figure it out, on pace to miss the playoffs for a 7th straight season. Mark Mathot, former senator, now broadcaster, finally admitted defeat on Twitter when he made that ridiculous comment 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. I believe it was March 2021, where he said the Senators will be a lot better than the Leafs in 2 to 3 years, and it won't even be close. Well, you look at the standings, turns out the Ottawa Senators still absolutely stink. I have so much that I want to say about this team, but I'll let you go first because I think a lot of people know where I stand on this team, and I've kind of called them not necessarily frauds. I've just said that they've been like overrated for the last number of years because they've shown zero indication whatsoever that they're going to take a leap and that they're even capable of taking a leap. And when I say a leap, it's like just make the damn playoffs, for crying out loud. Like, we're not even asking you to be like a Stanley Cup contender. Just get into the damn playoffs. But before I go on like a crazy like 5-minute rant or anything, I'll turn it over to you. Give me your thoughts on what's happening in Ottawa with the firing of DJ Smith. And then, of course, Jacques Martin becoming the interim head coach with Daniel Alfredson on the bench as the assistant. So a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, I saw a stat the other day, and Sens fans aren't going to want to hear this. It's since the lockout, 41 teams have had 15 regulation losses in their first 26 games. That's where Ottawa stands. And only one of those 41 have made the playoffs. And it was the Caps. I actually think it was the 65-goal year for Ovechkin. Funny that we were talking about that earlier. Wow. Yeah, they fired their coach and then they turned it around. So Ottawa's hoping to dig up that magic. It's going to be fun to watch this team and see what happens because they're up 3-0 tonight in Arizona. I expect them to go on a little bit of a heater because pretty well most teams do after a coaching change because there's a little spark. And as far as Ottawa goes, this city loves people who are loyal to this city. Okay, because let's face it, Kate, Ottawa is not Toronto. It's not Montreal. It's not New York. It's not LA. They call Ottawa the largest small town in the world because it is a legit city. It's just not a legit city, right? So when people like Jacques Martin come around and they return, and Daniel Alfredsson, who the city loves, people are going to get very excited. And I expect it to kind of bleed into the team. So I do think they're going to go on a little bit of a heater and turn it around. And I'm just picturing it, man, at the Sens games, they're going to be chanting Alfie's name at 11, just going nuts. And he's going to be given full credit. But to me, I don't know. I'd love to hear from Sens fans, as I always say, because let's say things go really well. Let's say in the next month or two, and even they finish the season strong. Would you want that tandem to still be there? Would you want Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredsson to still be there? Or even right now, are you thinking, yeah, I want things to go well, but I don't want this to be what our coaching staff is going forward? I know myself, I would not want a former Leafs legend at this point behind the bench. And I remember when there was Gilmore rumors because he was coaching the Kingston Frontenacs, and everyone thought like, oh, here comes Gilmore. He's going to coach the Leafs. And
Yeah,
I
like
was
his
like,
stepping stone to the NHL.
yeah, I was like, you know what, man? I love Dougie. You did your thing in Toronto. And I'm not going to say if things didn't go well that, I mean, I would forget all the good you brought to Toronto, but I just didn't even want to think of it in any negative way. And let's face it, we all have recency bias. So you're going to. And if I was a Sens fan, that's why I wouldn't want Alfredsson there long term. Right? Just I don't want there to be like a stain on Alfredsson's resume if things really and truly do not go well. But we'll see. I mean, you have no confidence in this team, eh, Bruno? Like again, like I still see a team that can score. I still see a team that they're pretty deep. I mean, they have a lot of talent, and the offensive numbers, the expected goals numbers for them are good. Like I think last time I checked, they were like top 5 to 7 in the league. So certain things indicate they can turn it around. Will they? I say will they? I mean, what would be turning it around? I mean, people want to see the playoffs. And I just pointed out that stat, and they're to the point now. I always look at pace. I always say, don't look at the standings, look at the pace. They're going to have to play it over 100-point pace the rest of the way to make the playoffs. And as you touched on with the Oilers that we talked about in our last show, all it takes is one stinker week or two where you lose 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 7 and you're done because now that points total is no longer possible. So it's going to be a blast because they got to do it now. They have to turn around now and go on a tear now. And now is the time because they should be motivated from this new coaching staff, right? And the fans are going to be pumped. And like I said, I think that bleeds into a lineup. But I'll let you go now, Bruno. I know you've been saving this, and from the way you started this segment, I think I'm gonna go get a drink and come back in about 20 minutes when you're done.
Yeah, just come back in about 20 minutes and we'll wrap up the podcast at that point.
All right.
But I'm sorry to break it to you, Senators fans. This team is not making the playoffs, and I don't even think they're going to come close to making the playoffs. Now, they're probably going to beat Arizona tonight, and that'll put them at 24 points through 27 games, which would be a pace of 73 points. So congratulations. A win tonight over the Coyotes will put the Senators on pace for 73 points this season. Now, do I think they're going to finish with 73 points? Probably not. Like, they're going to play better. I do, listen, I'll even admit it. I do like the talent on this roster. I like Brady Tkachuk. I like Tim Stützle. I like Jacob Chychrun and Jake Sanderson. I think their goaltending is a major problem. And I said this heading into the season. I had zero confidence in Joonas Korpisalo being a legit number one goalie. And it had nothing to do with like, I understand he played well last year with the Kings. And we've seen flashes from Korpisalo over his career. And we've seen, honestly, pretty dominant flashes at times. But the big red flag that I raise is that this dude hadn't played more than 37 games in a season before. So then the Senators hand this guy a long-term extension after a good season with the Kings, and they say, all right, take the reins. You're our number one. This guy hasn't played more than 37 games in a season. And you look at his stats at the quarter mark here, less than a 900 save percentage, a goals against over like 3.5. Their goaltending has been horrific. You just look at their 5-on-5 save percentage, 24th in the NHL. Their special teams.
That bad? Their goaltending's been that bad? I know it hasn't been good, but I know it's that bad.
Yeah, their goaltending has been rough. And even their special teams, like last year, their power play was amazing.
Yeah.
This year, and again, these are numbers before this game against the Coyotes that we keep referring to that's going on right now. 22nd in the league in power play percentage, 30th in penalty kill percentage. So their special teams has taken a complete nosedive. They're 10th in the NHL in goals per game, so they're still scoring. Like, that's pretty respectable. But 26th in the league in goals against per game. And my big thing with the Ottawa Senators, I sent out a tweet, and I think I referred to this tweet on the last show. I'm always going to loop the Leafs back into this, Lepore. I got to loop the Leafs back into this conversation. The Leafs have not missed the playoffs once in the Matthews, Marner, and Nylander era. Since they entered the league as rookies, going back to 2016, 2017, the Leafs have made the playoffs every single year. Now, do the Ottawa Senators have the exact same collection of talent as Matthews, Marner, and Nylander? No, they do not. But Brady Tkachuk is in his 6th year in the NHL. Tim Stützle, now in his 4th year in the NHL. Thomas Chabot, who I understand Senators fans have soured on a little bit, his 7th year in the NHL. They have so many guys locked up to long-term contracts. Batherson, Norris, Sanderson, go down the list, and this team can't even sniff the playoffs. Again, we're not even asking you to be a Stanley Cup contender. Get into the playoffs. For the love of God, make the playoffs once. They're on pace now to miss the playoffs for a 7th straight season. It's completely unacceptable. DJ Smith, quite frankly, deserves to be fired. I know there's been all these stories coming out about how great of a guy he is. And I know he used to be on the Leafs coaching staff, and I'm sure he's a fantastic guy, but the results have just not been there. So this team has to figure their shit out. And, on paper, it does seem like Jacques Martin is the guy. Like, when you think about, like, discipline and structure and defensively sound, like, those are some of the things that he's known for. Alfredson, I have no idea if he has the slightest clue how to be an assistant coach in the National Hockey League. I think they're just doing this for the vibes, to be quite honest, because it's healthy and he's a legend there. But I think the team's going to miss the playoffs again. And I don't know what the hell they do, Lepore, because they have everyone under contract long-term. And sure, they can probably trade some of these contracts, but the team is set. The core is set in place, and they can't win to save their lives.
See, that's what's so intriguing here, because if this does not work, it's been long enough now, and now the coach is gone. If this doesn't work, the next step is a trade, or trades for that matter, of significance. They have to do something, right? So it's, who are the guys? Who are the untouchables on that list? I'd say really and truly Sanderson, Stützle, and Tkachuk are the only 3 that you can't touch. I mean, I could see pretty much it. I could see Chabot getting moved. I mean, Sens fans with vibes lately, I think, wouldn't even hesitate to be okay with Batherson getting booted out the door. Norris, with the injuries, with the term he has left and the salary he's earning, that's a tough move. But that's the next step. That's it. So it's either, and again, like I said, it's going to be a blast, because this team's going to go on a tear and fight for a playoff spot, or it's going to be really fucking interesting to see how they react to 7 straight years of not making the playoffs, and especially if they're not even competitive. And Sens fans, man, like, I always feel like they're put like in this conundrum where they can't go either way. So if they finish the season really strong and then just miss, or like miss by 4 points or something, it gives them that little bit of optimism. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you shouldn't have it. I'm just saying it puts them, because I would be at that point. Some coach
be the same shit as last season, though, where they just missed and they're like, we're finally going to take the leap next season. And then the same crap happens again.
Yeah, but last year, to be fair, I mean, their goaltending was really bad all year last year, and they had a lot of injuries. So that's like my point. They held on to that. There was like, oh, we lost Norris in the first week and we had all these other injuries and our goalies couldn't make a save. Cam Talbot was a disaster. Forsberg got hurt. Like I think they had like by the end of the season they used like 6 or 7 goalies.
Yeah, it was crazy, their goaltending situation last year. That was brutal.
So again, they had something to hold on to. They're like, man, if we stay healthy and if we can get a fucking save, we can fight for a playoff spot or make the playoffs. And then this year they get off to this start. And I'll give credit to Sens fans. There was a lot of fans typically don't admit when there's serious issues with a team. There's always like a semi excuse or like they blame the coach because that's an easy example. I think Sens fans, again, I was impressed. We're really and truly acknowledging that there's issues with this team and this team has to be changed. But again, in comes this coaching staff. And if they have a great, what do they call it, great 2/3 of the season and just miss the playoffs, what's the feeling going to be? Is it going to be like, man, with Jacques Martin the whole season, we would have made the play, and then they got that again. Then they get excited in the summer.
That's
again.
exactly what they're going to tell them.
100%, but that's what's going to happen. So,
it's a rough situation. The only thing sort of in their favor right now is that they have a ton of games in hand. So even though like you look at the standings and they're dead last in the Atlantic Division, they're dead last in the Eastern Conference.
Have you seen their schedule though, Bruno?
I have not taken a look at their upcoming schedule.
Yeah, because they have, like you said, they have all those games in hand. There's a stretch of like 30 days where they play like 15 times.
Wow.
Bananas. I think it's January.
I guess that's what happens, right? When you're like this far behind. It's kind of crazy that they are this far behind. And I know like, there was a bunch of teams involved in the global series in Sweden, and that kind of put teams behind the 8 ball. Like the Leafs were in the same position where they had to catch up with all these games in hand.
Yeah.
But honestly, Lepore, another thing that's just completely unacceptable is that 17 of their first 26 games were at home.
We're at home.
Like we talked about how many home games they had to start the season. And to have all those home games where they typically play pretty well and to still be 11-15. Now they're going to soon to be 12-15 after they beat the Coyotes, but just completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I was right. It is January. Their first game in January is on the 2nd against the Canucks, and they go on to play 15 games in January. Like they're playing every second
rough,
day.
Man.
So we'll see what happens.
And as we've been talking, the Coyotes have made it a 3-1 game.
Cool. So I was excited. I was giving like 3-3 or let's get into it.
No, Coyotes are back in it. 3-1 right now for the Senators. Will they blow it? Maybe.
But this is the Michael Lepore lock of the season. Okay. Absolute Michael Lepore bet your house lock of the season.
Okay, let's hear it.
On the 27th of December, the first game back after the Christmas break, the Senators are in Toronto. Okay. Like I said, I expect them to win a few games. Sens fans are going to be confident. They're going to go into Toronto. They're going to beat the Leafs. And now it's going to be full blown. We're making it. Like that's going to be the one that push Sens fans over the edge because there's nothing they love more than beating the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's in the stars. It'll happen.
I couldn't agree more because the Senators are going to treat that like it's game 7 of the Cup final. Every time they play the Leafs, whether it's in Toronto, in Ottawa, it is game 7 of the Cup final. For that Senators team, there's going to be a Twitter battle between Paul Bissonnette and Mark Mathot. Oh, it's going to be great. And the Senators are probably going to win like 6-3. It's written in the stars.
100%. Of course it is. Of course.
Yeah, it's rough, man. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest, either about the Senators, the Leafs for that matter, before we wrap things up?
What do you think the Leafs do at practice tomorrow? Just try not to have pucks go off you and in. Jesus.
Yeah, that was just ridiculous. It's like every single bounce went the Rangers' way. And I hate, making excuses and blaming refs and things like that. But they scored one goal that went directly into the net.
And the guy fanned on it. He's trying to go high short side. He fanned on it and beat Jones 5-hole because it was kind of one of those awkward change-up shots. Hockey is what it is.
Yeah, it was just one of those stupid games. And then obviously they scored an empty netter to cap it off. I mean, I guess the positive is that I know he let in 4 goals tonight, but Martin Jones has actually been pretty solid as the Leafs' third string goalie, who's been now thrust into the number one job because Ilya
Jeez.
Samsonov stinks and Joseph Woll's injured. So this is something to monitor over the next little while. Like, what happens with Samsonov? Is he going to get his confidence back? So that's what I would be looking for over the next little stretch here. But the Leafs they're hanging in there, man. They're still dealing with injuries. Their goaltending situation is far from perfect, and they're still finding ways to win.
Yeah, Sammy will be a topic because there will be people calling for a trade if Martin Jones continues to play well, because what do you need Sammy for, and why not free up that money? So
yeah, he is on very thin ice, Ilya Samsonov. He's obviously on an expiring deal, so we'll see. We'll see what Brad Treliving has working behind the scenes, because Lepore, there's just no way that the team that we see now is going to be the Leafs post-trade deadline.
it's going to be very different, Bruno. Very different.
There's going to be a ton of changes, but maybe we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the Leafs trade deadline moves at some point.
Yeah, I mean, really, what we're probably going to end up talking about the Leafs trade deadline like 8 weeks leading up to the trade deadline. So we got a ton of shows that we could save that for. But that is going to do it for episode 127 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you are a first-time listener, long-time listener, and you really enjoyed the show, we would appreciate it so, so much if you give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. You have no idea how much that helps this show. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you really enjoyed the content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with your take on the Leafs or the Senators and all the things going on in Ottawa right now. And then while you're at it, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. If we don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas to everyone in GFP Nation, all
Happy
of your families
Hanukkah,
as
all
well.
that stuff.
Enjoy the holidays, enjoy the hockey, and we will talk to you very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
妈妈给他是有肉。